Hello everyone, welcome back to the Budget Sportsman. Thank you so much for joining me on today's video. Today we're going to be talking about knife sharpening, and we're going to take a look at the V-Sharp A4 sharpener from Warthog Sharpeners. Now over the years I've reviewed I think at least 3 other knife sharpeners, starting with the Ruixin Pro, which is a super budget friendly Chinese made knife sharpener you can usually get on eBay. I could get really good results with that knife sharpener, but it was super tedious and really annoying to use if I'm being honest. I also tried a belt-driven knife sharpener, which I did not care for the way it sharpened my knives, the results I got, or the damage that it did to my knives. Then I moved on to the WorkSharp Precision Adjust knife sharpener, and to be honest with you, I enjoyed that knife sharpener. I could get really consistent, really good results, usually shaving sharp knives, if I just put in a little bit of time and effort. However, it still had a little bit of fiddle factor, and for my wife, she would not be comfortable really using that, and I wanted something that was a lot easier to maybe just sit on the kitchen counter or to put in my shop and just be able to really quickly touch up and sharpen knives. I came across the Warthog series of sharpeners last year and was watching someone else use it with some really good results, and so I reached out to Warthog and they were kind enough to send this over to me for review. Now, of all the sharpeners that I've reviewed, this is probably the most expensive, coming in a little bit over $100 for this version, the V-Sharp A4. They also have an elite version of this, which is even more expensive. It has a wooden base rather than the rubber pad that this one sits on. I've not found the rubber to be a problem at all. So while this is the most expensive, what I want to know is it the easiest to use? Is it going to be the easiest to consistently keep my knives sharp without having to go through an entire process that just is time consuming and tedious? Now, the way the sharpener works is you can probably see that it is spring loaded. And so as you run your knife down through the middle, you're actually sharpening both sides at the same angle so that you're doing both sides at the same time. You're not having to fiddle with sharpening one side and then flipping the knife over and sharpening the other side. You're going to sharpen both sides at the same time. What you get when you buy the kit is you're going to get 2 of these pieces, and on one side there is a 320 grit diamond stone, and on the other side it includes a steel hone. Now, I do wish that they would include a few more grits with the kit that you buy. They are available separately. I'll say more about that maybe later in the video. Now, if you want to sharpen your knife at different angles, depending on whether maybe it's a bushcraft knife or a kitchen knife, there's going to be a difference probably in the angle that you want to sharpen it. When you put the stone into the sharpener here, down at the bottom, there's little places where it will snap in. In this case, I'm going to do 20 degrees. And so you stick it down in the bottom, right over here, and then you snap it in place. And you want to make sure that both sides are set to the same amount. So I'm going to start with the diamond stone facing in toward the middle, and I'm going to set it to 20 degrees. I'm going to play around today with this knife. This is an old hunting knife. I don't use it a whole lot anymore. I've got some other knives that I like more. And the reason I'm going to use this is because I'm okay with doing this to it. Here's a piece of concrete, and we're just going to make sure this knife is very nice and dull. Man, this pains me to even do this. All right, just kind of scrape it up there. And let's see. Yeah. Barely can get a cut. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just run this through. And before you do, what you want to do is you want to loosen this knob up here at the top, and you want to adjust this piece here so that your knife is sitting straight up and down. Now, I will be honest with you, I have found this part to be a little bit, I don't want to say tedious, but trying to make sure it's exactly straight up and down. I feel like this is the biggest area where you might get some fluctuations between now and the next time you come back, especially if you do different knives in between and you adjust this. The next time your knife might not be sitting in there exactly the same as it was last time, causing those stones to sharpen the knife a little bit differently and have to readjust that angle. I believe I've got it in there as straight as I can. So what you're going to do is you're just going to stick it in all the way. I would suggest getting in as far as you possibly can. That way you're getting all of the blade. You can hold up here to make sure your fingers aren't going to get anywhere near the blade. And then you just push down and run through. You can see it pushes out and then springs right back in. You do want to make sure you kind of run around so that, like in this case, I've got quite a bit of a curve on that tip right there. I want to make sure I curve around so that I'm sharpening all the way to the tip. And you're going to want to run this through a good number of times. I'm going to probably start with 50 and just see what happens. We probably are going to have to do more than that since I just rubbed it on a piece of concrete. All right, now I'm only about 15 strokes in, but I can already feel the difference in resistance as I'm sharpening. I can already tell it's taking off some of that burr and it's starting to slide across those stones a lot easier. All right, we've taken this knife 50 strokes through the sharpener with the 320 grit stones. It probably only took me maybe a minute to 2 minutes at the most. I don't expect this knife to be amazing yet, but let's see if it's any better. Yeah, it's definitely better. We're definitely not there yet, but it is definitely quite a bit better. I think I'm gonna go ahead and do about another 50 to 75 strokes through the sharpener, and then we'll check it again before we move on to the hone. All right, we've gone another 75 strokes with this knife through the 320 grit stones on the sharpener for a total of 125 strokes. Let's see if we're getting anywhere. Oh yes, that is a lot better. Okay, still a little bit rough. I think I'm gonna go just a little bit more before I hit those hones. Maybe another 50 strokes. All right, so I've done another 75 strokes with this knife through the knife sharpener at the 320 grit stone. I don't expect it to be perfect, but let's just see where we're at. It is definitely doing better. It's able to take off some pretty fine pieces. It feels like there might be a little bit of a burr there. You know, it's not great, but remember we started by rubbing it across a rock and we couldn't cut paper at all. But after 200 strokes, I'm not seeing a big improvement between when we were at like 125 to 150 strokes and 200. So let's go ahead and flip the stones around to the hone side and run it through the hone. Now what the Warthog folks recommend with your sharpener is that when you flip it around to the hone, if you are at 20 degrees with the stone, that you would go to 25 degrees on the hone, or if you were at 25 degrees with the stone, you'd go to 30 degrees on the hone. So what I'm going to do, I was at 20 degrees, I'm going to put these hones in at 25 degrees, flip them both around to where the hone side is in, toward the middle, put it at 25 degrees, and I'm going to go ahead and run this through the hone, probably another 50 to 100 times, and see what my final result is. All right, so we did 75 strokes through the hone set at that 25-degree angle, and let's see what we have. Wow, that is a very significant improvement even over before we did the hone. That is a lot better. Let's try shaving. We're not quite there with the shaving. I am getting a few hairs off, but this is just not quite what I would consider shaving sharp, where I could actually shave a bald spot on my arm. It's popping a few hairs off, but it's just not quite there. All right, now that you've seen how the sharpener works and the results, let's talk about some of the pros and cons, starting with the positives. Now, the reason that I would recommend this sharpener is because of its ease of use and simplicity. Super easy to adjust the angles and super easy to use and get good results. If you're like me and you're a little bit intimidated about a whetstone and manually sharpening a knife, or you've tried other sharpeners that just felt fiddly, this is probably the easiest sharpener that I've ever personally used. It would be great to keep on your kitchen counter and just sharpen your knives on a regular basis. I tend to spend a lot of time sharpening my wife's kitchen knives, and then they go for months and they're super dull before I get motivated to sharpen them again. This is super easy and be super simple to just keep those knives sharp on a regular basis. For me as a hunter, this will probably be right on the table when I'm processing game, just to touch up that knife even throughout the butchering process. Now, as simple as it is, there is still a little bit of a learning curve to make sure that you get this center guide perfectly straight up and down for whatever knife you're sharpening. And even once you get it straight up and down, you do need to be careful because this is so simple. You can really get going fast, but you want to make sure that you're taking the time to make sure that knife is sitting flat on that guide. It's not angled like this or like this, but also that it's sitting flat this way as well, and that you're going down through there very consistently each and every time for the best results. Now, speaking of results, one of the cons to me about this knife sharpener is that the results are good, but not great. If you want that knife that has a perfect polish edge on it and it's just shaving sharp and it just has no issues shaving or slicing through the finest bit of paper, then I haven't quite been able to get those kind of results with this sharpener. Now, let me be quick to say, I don't think it's a design flaw of the sharpener. In fact, I'm a really big fan of the design of this sharpener. I think the issue is that when you buy it, it comes with that 320 grit stone and a hone and nothing in between. With other sharpeners where I have been able to get that really great results, usually I'm starting with a 320 grit if it's really beat up, and then I'm moving down to like 600, 1000 grit, and even a ceramic before I get those really, really nice results. And I think the 320 grit is just a little bit too coarse to get those just amazing results. Now, if you just want a functional knife, even in the kitchen or outdoors or whatever it is, this is going to get it sharp enough to be very functional. It's just not going to have that little final extra touch of razor sharp performance. Now, if you wanted to spend the money, they do sell additional stones of different grits. And that does lead me to another con in that I would be happy to buy them, but they are a little bit expensive. The sharpener itself, I think, is right now about $105 to $110 on Amazon. And if I remember correctly, an additional set of stones is somewhere around like $60 to $70, which to me is just a lot after I've already spent $100 on the knife sharpener. I really wish that they would include at least one more finer grit of stone with your purchase of the knife sharpener. But all in all, I am very pleased with the result of the Warthog sharpener, and I would encourage you to check them out if you're in the market for a new sharpener. With all of that said, let me know what you think of the sharpener and the video down in the comments, and until next time, remember to get off YouTube and get outdoors into God's great creation.